Alrighty. This week is Parshas Yisro. That is Exodus 18, where it begins, and it goes through the end of Exodus 20. And this Parsha, this week's reading, is so powerful. I want to say, in one sense, it's the most important reading in the Torah. In another sense, we don't want to give it too much importance. What do I mean by that? Once upon a time, the daily service, the daily prayer service, included a reading of the Ten Commandments. And at a certain point, the rabbis removed the reading of the Ten Commandments from the daily service because people had the sense that this part of the Torah is more important than any other. And so I think that we're called to, on the one hand, recognize its importance not for itself, but for what it tells us about the rest of the Torah, in the sense that we look at the Ten Commandments, the giving of the Torah, as it's referred to in Jewish tradition, Matan Torah, or as it's referred to by those, outside of the Jewish tradition as the revelation at Sinai, as sort of a moment, the central moment of the Torah, as though the Ten Commandments are more important than any other part of the Torah. Of course, we know that there are 613 commandments in the Torah. Of course, not all of them apply to all people at all times. It's always relevant, but not necessarily. It's always relevant in the broader sense, but there are some laws that apply, for example, to individual people, specific people in specific circumstances. The laws that apply to a king, the laws to apply to priests, the laws that apply to the temple service, of course, right? All of these they have eternal value, but only specific practical application. But the point is that the Ten Commandments, the Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, is a central moment in the Torah, but in a way that gives us insight into the entire Torah. If we make the mistake in thinking that the Ten Commandments are a more true or a more holy or a more important aspect of the Torah, then we're missing the message of the Ten Commandments. So, in one sentence, the Ten Commandments and the story of the giving of the Torah are there not because they are more godly than the rest of the Torah, but because they give us an insight into the godly nature of the entire Torah, and indeed all of life, and our relationship with God. So when people talk about, so what then is, there is some uniqueness to the Ten Commandments, right? The Ten Commandments are described in Jewish tradition as being all-encompassing, as though every one of the 613 commandments can find its roots in one of the 10. But that is is that an academic statement to make? I guess it's echoing that theme that the nature of the Ten Commandments is, or the way the Torah describes the giving of the Ten Commandments and the giving of the Torah, is a way of describing something that is relevant to the entire Torah, to all of the 613 commandments. how each commandment is found in the Ten Commandments? No. Okay. It's an interesting study. I want to skip to the end, right? Right after the Ten Commandments. Powerful teaching from the Baal Shem Tov. So this is Exodus 20:15, page 300. The giving of the Torah is described in the introduction before the Ten Commandments as it was on the third day at morning, and there was thunder and lightning and a thick cloud on the mountain, on Mount Sinai, and the sound of the shofar. Very loud, and all the people trembled. And then the mountain trembles. So we have this image of thunder and lightning, and everything is trembling. The people are trembling. There's a sense of awe. And then, right after the Ten Commandments, the Torah says something which catches our attention. Chol ha'am ro'im et hakolot ve'et ha'lapidim ve'et kol ha'shofar. And all the people saw the thunder and the lightning and the voice of the sound of the shofar and the mountain smoking. Vayar ha'am vayanu'u vayamdu merachok, and the people saw and they were moved, they trembled, and they stood far off. So many people are struggling with this phrase. And the people saw the sounds, saw the thunder and the lightning. And of course, we could read it, we could say that, a simple reading, we could massage the text and say that the people saw the lightning, and it includes the thunder and the lightning, but really they're referring to seeing the lightning. The people heard the thunder and saw the lightning, and they're just saying they saw the lightning. Okay, that's one. But the mystics are caught up with this, seeing the sounds. What does it mean to see the sounds? And of course, there is the phenomenon of synesthesia, where people have crossover sensory experiences, where people hear colors or see music. People smell color, right? This is something that happens to people usually in drug-induced hallucinations, but and also in some cases, but that's of course not interesting to us, because that's a circumstance. It's not a teaching. So what does it mean to see the sounds? So the midrashic teaching is that the people saw that which is normally heard, and heard that which is normally seen. And it describes two different ways in which we know things. We know things with certainty when we see them. There is a kind of objective reality to something when we see it. And we see things that we can't necessarily describe. So, whereas when we hear things, we understand them, we hear them one word at a time, but we only hear things we're hearing a reproduction of the thing. We're not hearing the thing itself. So if I tell you a story, you're hearing the story, and you hear it one word at a time, and you grasp it, but you're essentially recreating it in your mind. And so there's always this question of, is the thing that you're grasping a objective reality, or is it your subjective recreation? And so in general, when we talk about things that we hear or things that we see the natural world and we hear about the spirit world. We hear of God, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. But we see the physical world, we see nature. Nature is empirical. And so what the reference here, say the rabbis, the people saw the sounds, is to say that people were experiencing the spiritual world with the kind of certainty and empirical reality that is normally ascribed to the natural world. And so this is very powerful teaching. Maybe we can look in a little bit into the pros and cons of seeing versus hearing. When we hear things, right, on the one hand, it's the downside of hearing something is that, as we said, it's a recreation in our own mind. Whereas when we see it, it's objective reality. On the other hand, when we see something, it is often, there are things that we see that we can't explain. They don't necessarily feel personal to us. They might be real, but they may not be real for me. What is the impact that it's having on me? Whereas when we hear something, we don't have that same certainty, but at the same time, the impact of hearing something is in my control. It's my world to engage with and to think about and to absorb and to make a relationship with. And so that which I hear is personal to me, that which I see is outside of me. And so it's important to hear the word of God. I think that on the whole, as Jews and as people, we want to hear the word of God. That should be our most familiar tool, is the tool of hearing. And that really is the real life way that our everyday engagement with God is through hearing. However, it's important to have the foundation of vision, the foundation of sight, to say that when I am relating to God, this isn't only the God of my understanding. There is also a reality. God is a higher reality. It's not just my subjective quest for spiritual fulfillment. There is a truth that is larger than me, that I can never possibly imagine, that I cannot articulate, that I can't put into words, that I can't explain, that I don't understand, that I'm only touching with my worship, with my engagement, with my study. And so in this moment of the giving of the Torah, we are being introduced to the Torah as a visual experience, as though to say, understand that this reality that I'm introducing you to is a reality, and it's larger than yourself, and there are aspects of it that you can never understand, or that you can never put into words. aspects of it that can only be described in a picture, because it would take 1,000 words and more to say what the picture is saying. You could talk for centuries describing what this picture is depicting in one moment. So we're being introduced to the Torah as a picture, but then we're being told to engage with it as hearing. And that's the next verse. Vayomru Moshe, they said to Moses, speak with us, v'nishma, so that we may hear. They said to Moses, Daber atah imanu v'nishma, you speak with us, so that we may hear. So after they see it, then they go and try to hear it. Baal Shem Tov has a beautiful teaching on this, maybe looking at the same thing from another angle. One of my favorite stories he tells us a parable. A very skilled musician, a band, big band, is playing the most beautiful music. So perfect, so full of life and energy. And this band is so powerful that as soon as they start playing, you can't help yourself but start dancing. And the more they play, the more the people around start dancing, and they press closer to hear the music and to engage with it, and the music lifts them out of their seats. Before you know it, the whole room is just bouncing. They're taking the roof off. And then walks by a deaf man. A deaf man walks by, and he sees these people just throwing themselves around the room, bouncing, gyrating, gesticulating. These people are crazy, he says. What's going on here? And he thinks that everyone there is nuts. No matter how you explain to that person the power of music to make you move, this person would never understand. And in many ways, we are that person. We are that deaf person. We see the world of Torah, the world of religion, and all of the Jewish practices and rituals and all the things that humans engage in to try and connect with God, or more precisely, the things that we're commanded to do to engage with God. And of course, if it has to be a commandment, it means we don't hear the music. How would you get that person to dance, that deaf person? You would tell them, you have to. You would incentivize them to dance. Tell them, if you're going to really move your hands and legs now, along with all the other people, I'll put you in paradise. What's paradise? Candy. So we're all that deaf person seeing the music, but in reality, there is a cosmic music, there's a divine music, that if we would hear it, we would dance. The mitzvahs would come naturally to us. Our service of God would be a spontaneous expression of joy and love. We would intuitively and instinctively move with the divine rhythm that the universe is moving to. And this verse describes that awkward circumstance that when we are told the Torah, we are seeing the sounds and we're not hearing them. We are all kind of tone deaf to the true rhythm of the Torah. So God is telling us these 10 commandments, revealing the Torah to us, revealing his presence to us, and we are only seeing the sounds. Now the teaching is, now these people stood far. When they saw the sounds, they stood back further. But maybe the call is for us to move closer. When we see these sounds and we recognize that something is happening here that we don't understand, maybe we try and move into it and realize that we're not really deaf. We're just not close enough to hear it right now. And so in a way, the deaf person seeing the dancing is painful and awkward, but it's also a gift. Because to be shown dancing gives us something to aspire to. Will we ever manage to hear the music? I don't know if we'll ever manage to hear the music. But at least we can see the dancers. At least we can see the sounds. And try our best to dance along. To have the humility to recognize that something amazing is happening here that we just don't have the senses to receive. So the people hear the sounds. Powerful.
Some people are more deaf than others.
Oh yeah. Let's look at the 10 Commandments for a moment. So remember we said that the 10 Commandments are really cosmic teachings that encompass the whole Torah, and they're a window to look through to see the rest of the Torah. The first of the 10 Commandments, I am the Lord your God who took you out from the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage. You shall not have any other gods before me. And then the Torah, that's sort of the foundation of everything. And then the Torah continues, Lo sa'aseh lecha fesel v'chol temunah. Don't make a statue or a picture. Don't make for yourself a statue or a picture of that which is in the heavens above or on the earth below. You shall not bow down to them, nor shall you worship them. What does it mean, don't make yourself? So the word lo sa'aseh lecha, you shall not make lecha, a statue or a picture, can be translated, do not make for yourself a picture, or do not make a picture of yourself, a statue of yourself. Right? Again, in the traditional textual analysis of the Torah, we say the Torah could have just said, do not make, lo sa'aseh pesel kol temunah, don't make a statue or a picture. Why does it say don't make for yourself a statue or a picture? What do we see in this word? Baal Shem Tov says, we are all what is a statue? What is a picture? It's a representation, right? It's the image of something without the thing itself. You have a copy. Yeah, so there you have a picture on the wall of someone's face, but the person is not there. This is something we don't want to be. We never want to be a picture. We never want to be performing. We want to be being. The king has a twin brother, same face, but only one of them is the king. And so the worst thing that we can do now, should we give up on trying to represent God, Tselem Elohim, the image of God? After all, people are created in the image of God. Of course, the word image here is different. Temuna is different than Tselem, right? We're created there. It's more, perhaps a better translation would be we're created in the form of God, right? Here it's the image, the picture of God, the statue. So should we give up on trying to manifest to embody the image of God in which we were created? No, of course, that's our life's work. But we have to be careful not to become a statue, not to become a picture, not to do without trying to be. And this is kind of the flip side maybe of the story of the dancers. If you're a deaf person trying to dance, sometimes we get caught up. We understand that we're called, we've seen the sounds, and we understand that we're called to dance. And what we end up doing, there's a risk in that moment of what we end up doing is getting stuck in the image of dancing, in creating a picture of dancing, without recognizing that what we're really supposed to do is to try to be what the music is calling us to be, rather than to look like what the music would look like if we heard it. And so as we approach our worship of God, as we approach our life as people on earth, it's not only about doing the mitzvahs. It's about trying to be what the mitzvahs are calling us to be. I heard, I'll give you an example. A person wants to be a doctor. And so they stress about getting good grades on their tests in medical school. And they're stressing about getting into a good medical school, and they're stressing about getting an A on their medical exams so that they can be a doctor. This is very anxiety provoking, this perspective. Instead, a person should ask themselves, what is it that you're really trying to be? You want to do doctoring, but what do you want to be? You want to be compassionate? You want to be helpful? You want to be loving? You want to be healing? Right? That's not something that a test will ever grade you on.
Same for teachers.
Right. So you want to do teaching right, or you want to be a teacher? So if we are trying to do, then we will be stuck in constantly doubting whether we're doing it right and being anxious about making sure that we're getting it right. Whereas if we're trying to be, then we understand that we're never truly there, and we're constantly working toward it. It's a constant struggle. It's an exercise in moving toward, rather than a prescription, a choreography. So this can be very freeing. Don't try to be a picture of a spiritual person or a religious person. Try to be what God is calling you to be in every moment. And one thing is for sure, we're never going to fully be there. So maybe we have to work towards aspiring, work on it. You have to work on working on it, not on becoming it. Right? A person who wants to become a doctor, that's over as soon as they became a doctor. Or a person wants to become a teacher. That means that they don't focus on healing. They don't focus on enlightening. They focus on becoming, not being. So be alive. This is another example of this in current psychological thought. Is the difference between a growth-oriented mindset or a fixed-oriented mindset. A pesel, statue, picture is a fixed mindset. I am what I am. And I'm doing what I can do. Growth-oriented mindset is I'm constantly working towards whatever it is, whatever ideal I hold dear. The paradox is that in the fixed mindset, a person can be successful at the things that they are fixed in. In the growth mindset, a person is never truly successful because they're always aspiring to a more refined manifestation of their ideal, of their truth. So right so in the fixed mindset, you can get it right. In the growth-oriented mindset, you're always working. On the other hand, in the growth mindset, in the fixed mindset, there's only one moment at which you really hit it, at which you really get it right. And there's a definite right and a definite wrong. And 99.9% of the time, you're going to be wrong because there's only one specific slot that you fit correctly into. Whereas with the growth-oriented mindset, even though you're never truly getting it right, but you're always being what you're meant to be.
It's a more humble mindset.
It's a more humble mindset, but on the other hand, it's also more prone to success in the sense that you can ask yourself, am I authentically trying? And you can be trying even if you're not succeeding. You can be working towards even if you're not there yet. So that's perhaps what the Torah is calling us to do and saying, I'm talking to you about something that's beyond and transcendent. And you don't hear the music. And don't make a picture. Just try and approximate it. Try and work towards it. Try and be humble to it and open to it. Try and move towards it. Yeah. I hope that's helpful.